with a financial from 15 different companies? Yes. Then you're stuck waiting 7 hours for this report because that is a lot of information to pull back. So sometimes there's no way around it. Most of the time we can try and improve the speed of our reports, and we'll talk about that. I have unhide because I do use that in the training. So at some point, if you want to go into your application settings, let's go to the jet ribbon and let's turn on the unhide. We have unlock and purge cache as well. I don't typically use unlock. And I don't typically use purge cache because that just purges that local cache. And then when you run the report, it says, well, there's nothing in that local cache. Well, it's the same thing as hitting refresh. So why have two buttons that do the exact same thing? But we will use unhide specifically tomorrow, probably. So let's go back into design. We can see right now we can't access our JFX. We go back into design, and now we can access that. This is actually a new feature. This used to be just one button. And our developers decided to break this up into 4 different ones, one for each function, to make it easier to simply grab the one you want. Before, we'd always have to click on the JFX, come down here, choose the one that we want, and then go from here. So they just broke it up, which is kind of nice. The report wizard and table builder, we might come back to on day 3. The table builder I actually find is very helpful if you just need to build an Excel table. The report wizard is great if you need to build a really quick, really simple report, but it has its limitations. Let's quickly talk about the browser. The browser allows you to quickly go through and see, here are all my tables in Nav. Right? That's a lot of tables. Chances are you are not going to use 90% of those. In fact, you're probably going to find yourself using the same 5, 10, 15 tables over and over again. The nice thing with this is we can actually make certain tables favorites. I don't have to keep scrolling through here or go to my JFX and try and find that table out of this, 900,000 tables. Yes?
I had something pop up when I tried to click within the data provider returned the following error.
That's exactly right.
You have the 5 slashes?
No.
Oh, you know?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I know what it is. So let's go ahead and close those. If you got that message, let's go back to our data source settings. And on the general tab, let's look at our drill down. Or not drill down, no. The browser should work. What is the, I'm looking at something
It's a
else.
Yes.
well, I just closed it.
Yeah,
The server
If you
that
go
now
back
is
in.
not accessible.
Yeah.
Oh, it-
interesting.
Here, mine's still up. Up, no,
Yeah.
it just closed.
well, then I
Some of you are getting it, some of you are not. That'll be something I have to research.
Did you do it?
Oh, and when I closed it, it just closed.
So what does the actual message say? The server,
It said,
The server's not accessible, and then your browser comes up and the table and the fields are empty.
huh, interesting. But it's weird that some of you are getting it and some of you aren't.
But
Okay.
you were set up yesterday, right, Erica? You just got all your access to Navision and everything yesterday.
This should be going to the sample database.
Okay.
The only thing I can think of is if, let's see, let's drop this down. And we'll get to here, but we'll start here now. So next to the data source settings, we've got this little drop down. And this will allow us to choose the data source. And maybe that's the issue.
I don't have that.
yeah,
You have
it's
nothing.
super short. It says jet training and then my data source.
All right, we're going to choose jet training. Well, I have quite a few because I have to do training for CRM, Cubes, GP, Nav. So let's make sure we all choose the jet training one.
I don't even have jet training.
All right, then we'll have to update that.
Oh wait, no,
If you click on
data source. Oh, okay. I see.
There we go.
Give your license.
My license went back to you are not licensed. It went from green to red.
Okay. So let's go ahead and
Hey, this is
Let's
day
let's go
one.
ahead and click on that real quick.
Yeah.
Guys, let's go.
When I came those things, it went to.
Right, yeah, this is
We're all motivated the same way.
Yeah.
gain access to the seat. Let's see. Does anybody else lose their designer status?
Where did you
I'm not licensed.
She needs to get the license.
Oh, okay. That's because we need to update your code. So make sure you're on your jet one and good thing I didn't close
I
this.
did. I lost my status.
Okay. So let's try reactivating that. We'll put that back up on the screen. If you lost your designer status,
They still have the data source setting.
Okay, so go ahead and hit OK.
Erica, where are you right now?
How do I go back to adding my
I just
data
opened up
source?
so she can see.
So go to
Get the.
the activation. You go to the help.
The zero-
So close out of there.
zero's not-
Go to the help and activate license. Okay. So go ahead and close out of there. Go ahead and go to your data source settings.
Just gonna leave it, right, it's gonna try.
And you're not licensed for this data source. So let's go ahead and re-enter in that activation code. Unless that should work. So we'll have to type all that in. Activate online.
So I gotta do two again?
Yeah, if it says you're not a designer,
So the browser should be like this.
browser should look like that. Jet training perfect. Good or bad? All
I
right.
think we're good on this side.
All right.
Did you go back to browser?
Check your browser.
Mine's taking a long time to
Yeah.
It's attributes required the file programs, Jet database.
Yeah, mine's taking a blank. I didn't get the error message, but it's still coming up.
I got a totally different one now. It says Dynamics Nav front recorded.
Yeah, can't access the file. So, do you have access? You should have access to the C drive.
So then where do we go? Do we do that?
So
Files and attributes are correct.
Well, actually, we were testing. So after you plug in the license,
I got this
to test it,
Okay.
you go to
Okay. Well, let's figure out
data
what it is real
sources,
quick. So I go back here and I go to,
Your
and then
data source settings.
this needs to be green. So that means something's not right.
Okay.
And then because of that, we won't be able to go to the next step.
Let's look at the connection.
So then you go to browse, which is the
Okay. All right. Here's what we're gonna do.
So
yeah,
you're back to not make
but it's not gonna let you go.
Yeah.
oh,
Me
what the
too.
heck?
The license didn't work.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna have everybody do is basically delete their license. So let's open up a Windows Explorer.
Do we stay in Excel still, or do you want us to?
You, yeah, you can go and close it down,
Okay.
just to be sure.
I'm still licensed, but you want me to?
If you're licensed, don't mess with it.
Well,
You're the only one.
What's that?
Mine's
For everybody,
success.
don't be selfish.
Okay. Yours is good?
With that, oh wait, no,
Okay.
it still says it's.
Yeah, for some reason it's going back. So something's going on. We're going to delete our activation tokens. So what we have to do is go to, let's see if I remember where this is, %app data % in a Windows browser. Not Internet Explorer, but Windows browser. App, APP, DATA, %.
Wait, hang on, so what's the first part though? Do we have to type that? in?
Percent.
You have to do %.
Oh, you have to actually spell it out.
Yeah, well, yeah, the % sign. % app data %.
We don't have access for
Yes,
that.
I don't either.
That's probably part of the problem.
That's what I was looking
All right. So we might have to bring Scott down here and get that squared away.
I'm
Poor
expecting
Scott.
Len.
Well, the good news is we're not going to mess around with this, so maybe we can have him kind of figure it out during lunch. We can work with him on that. Because that will be a problem if we can't do it. Let's try one other. If you're not licensed, it won't even work, so we will have to get that squared away. Because this is where our token is, and I want to make sure you have access to the database file itself. I don't know if it's just locked or what it is. So, all right. Since we don't have access to that, let's just kind of look at this in theory then, instead of in practice. And we'll get that squared away during lunch. Okay. So, my browser works, so let's just look at it. Okay. As we look at this, here are all the various tables. Now, like I said, you're going to find yourself using the same tables over and over and over again. So what I can do is I can come through and make those favorites. Let's say I use my customer ledger entry in my customer table all the time. I can highlight it, click little star. I'll use my customer one all the time. I'll go ahead and choose that. And maybe I use my vendor, so I can click over here and typing in vendor. Yeah, okay, well I'll use my vendor and my vendor ledger entry. As we can see, it actually stars all of the fields in that table. So if I click on any one of these tables, I can now see the fields that are available to me in that table. You'll notice I have a little arrow next to the names. I can drop this down, area code, and see some sample values in there. So if I'm looking for something very specific, document number, right, in those ledger entry tables, you're going to find that there's various document numbers, there's various numbers. So if we come into my vendor ledger entry, I've got applies to document number. I've got the balance account number. I've got the buy from vendor number, right? I've got all these various numbers. If I know what I'm looking for, if it follows a specific pattern, I can come through and say, okay, I know it starts with a WBB. I'm only seeing a small sample of the data, I'm not seeing all of it. If I tried to show you every value in your table, it would take forever to refresh. So it's just showing you a really small schematic portion of that information. But it gives you an idea of what's within that table. Now, how do I use that favorites to my advantage? Well, I can turn on my favorites, and now I just see the tables that I'm going to use the most. This will actually carry over into my JFX. So let's say I open up my JFX now. I can see my favorites as highlighted. Now when I drop down my table, I just see those tables. These are the ones I use all the time. If I don't turn my favorites on, I see every single table. Now if you know what you're looking for, it's not too bad because I can come in and just say, well, I'm looking for something with the word item in it. Well, here's every table with the word item in it. Still a lot for me to search through. Okay? So having those favorites can help you save a little bit of time. One thing I have found is people sometimes turn on their favorites without setting any favorites. And what happens is, well, let's turn these off. You know, it's the last thing I always think of when I'm dealing with a client and they're like, I'm in there writing a report, I drop down their table, you got nothing. I'm like, can you not access your database? Yeah, I'm connected, it should be fine. Well, it's because I have favorites on and I have no favorites. So just be aware of that, that will happen from time to time. Okay. You accidentally turn it on. There's one last thing I want to talk about with the browser and favorites. Let me just go ahead and turn this on as a favorite. Oops, activity step, whatever. So I've got my favorites here. I may say, you know what, I'm never going to use this step number. I'm going to unclick that and make it a non-favorite. The problem I have with doing specific fields, you never know when you're going to need a specific field in the table. And what's going to happen is you'll turn on your favorites, and you're going to try and write something, and you're like, I'm pretty sure I know that step number is in this table. You're not going to be able to find it, and you're going to pull your hair out looking for it. Because you took that one field and said, I'm never going to use that. When you say that, you will use it in probably about 6 months and totally forget about it. So I highly recommend not unchecking any of those, just as a word of caution. Snippets we'll come back to. Pivot table, this is for when we connect to cubes. We're not going to deal with that. It's a whole separate training all in itself. Drill down we'll talk about as we go through our training. But debug, I do want to at least show you this debug. Because when you go through and create JET reports, at some point you're going to make a mistake. JET is going to get mad. You're going to need to figure out why. Okay. So I'm going to just create something here. Rows, customers, bring back the name, and the balance is, let's see, okay. Oops, it would help if I could type properly. Okay. So what happens is I get a pound value. It's important to note that anytime JET returns an error, it's going to be a pound value. It's not going to return a pound num or pound name or pound ref. It's always going to be a pound value, but pound value could also be an Excel error. So how do I determine if this is Excel or JET? I go to debug. Anytime you see pound value, your very first instinct should be, I need to go to debug. Get in that habit. If it's a JET error, it's going to show you invalid table of customers. Ah, okay. I hit OK and I can go back to my JFX. Well, it's saying I have an invalid table of customers. Well, let's drop this down. I'm going to type in the word customer. If I type in customers, I see I have no tables with the word customers in it. I take off that S and suddenly I've got customer, customer account. Oh, you know what? It was supposed to be just customer singular. I fix that, hit OK, and I still get a pound value. I'm going to go back to debug. Now it's saying I've got an invalid filter of less than 0. I just made a simple mistake and typed 2 less thans. So the important thing to note when we're dealing with our debug is that it's only going to show us one error at a time. It's going to show us the very first error we find. Because oftentimes if we fix that first error, it's going to fix all the other ones. After it, no sense in showing the 15 errors that result from the one first error. Now I can go back to the JFX. It says I've got this as a bad filter. I can certainly edit that here and delete that out. Or the other nice thing is I can come up to the formula bar. I can simply say this is just a function. Let's go ahead and delete that out. Hit enter. I get that my pound value is gone, but I have no values. Okay. Anytime you create a query, don't ever trust the results until you hit report. And I am trying to be accessed by another database here. So let's save this real quick.